The world of professional sports is a ruthless and unforgiving business. It does not operate on hopes, dreams, or social narratives. It runs on capital, leverage, and the hard realities of the marketplace. When athletes sit across the negotiating table from billionaire team owners who control the structure of the league itself, understanding true market value becomes critical. Misjudging that value can quickly turn a negotiation into a crisis. As of March 10, 2026, tensions between league leadership and the Women's National Basketball Players Association had reached a boiling point. For months, the Players Union and the league had been locked in intense negotiations over a new collective bargaining agreement with the Women's National Basketball Association. Players pushed for significant changes to revenue sharing, improved salaries, and expanded benefits. Demands they argued were necessary as the league continued to grow in popularity and visibility. League ownership, however, approached the talks from a different financial perspective. Negotiations stalled as both sides held firm, and the deadline set by Adam Silver, who oversees the broader basketball ecosystem tied to the league, arrived without a finalized agreement. Without a deal in place, uncertainty began to spread across the league. Fans, media outlets, and players all wondered what would happen next. A delayed season or labor stoppage would affect not only team operations, but also the athletes whose careers depend on the league's stability. Amid this uncertainty, one name continued to dominate headlines: Caitlin Clark. As one of the most recognizable stars in the sport, Clark represents the league's rapid growth and new global attention. Her emergence has brought unprecedented visibility, television ratings, and commercial interest to women's basketball. Because of that spotlight, the broader dispute between players and ownership has sometimes been framed as a clash between the league's established leadership and the new wave of star power reshaping the sport. Some commentators portray it as a generational transition, veteran players protecting their influence while younger stars redefine the league's cultural and financial landscape. Within the union itself, debates have reportedly intensified over strategy and direction. Publicly, leaders such as Union President Nneka Agwamike and Executive Director Terry Carmichael Jackson have emphasized solidarity and long-term progress for players. Privately, however, analysts suggest that differences of opinion may exist over how aggressively the union should push its demands. For fans watching from the outside, the situation highlights the complex reality of modern sports economics. Collective bargaining disputes often involve enormous financial stakes, competing priorities, and difficult compromises. Whether the league ultimately finds common ground or faces a longer standoff, the outcome will shape the next era of the WNBA. One thing is certain: the future of the league, and the players who define it, now depends on what happens in the negotiation rooms over the coming weeks.
They are trying to downplay this letter that came out from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart that makes the higher ups in the PA look absolutely awful, in Terry Carmichael Jackson and Nneka Agwamike. And with all of that being said, as they've continued to negotiate these past couple of days, they have stopped all public negotiations, okay? Details about the latest proposal never came out. The latest counter proposal from the WNBA to the WNBP.
Witness the complete breakdown of transparency within the union. Leadership was so disconnected, so mismanaged, that star players like Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart were forced to leak a multi-page letter to ESPN just to reveal that the rank-and-file players were being kept entirely in the dark. Shockingly, the executive committee hadn't even seen a formal economic proposal until January. In any competent corporate environment, a union director who withholds term sheets from their own board while publicly steering the workforce toward a high-stakes strike would be immediately dismissed for gross malpractice. Yet in the insulated, echo chamber world of the WNBA, the leadership closed ranks, stopped communicating with the public, and drove the organization straight off a cliff. By eliminating all transparency, the union shielded itself from the justified anger of its own members. Middle-tier players, women earning roughly $80,000 annually, relying on these paychecks to survive, were silenced, forced to watch as their financial futures were gambled away by veteran stars who had already secured millions overseas through contracts and endorsements. And now, the deadline has arrived. The bill is due, and the consequences are unavoidable.
Okay. Here it says the league said that Tuesday, March 10th, is the date a term sheet for a new CBA must be completed in order to avoid a delay in the start of the 2026 season, which is scheduled to tip off May 8th. There's been movement from both sides as the deadline approached, as the WNBA and WNBPA swapped counter proposals over the weekend. But as of Tuesday morning, there's no deal. There's no deal, y'all. Like, let's just be clear. There's no deal, nothing.
Nothing. There is no deal. Nothing has been secured. Let that sink in. The WNBA was sitting on the single greatest financial opportunity in the history of women's sports. They had a freshly minted media rights deal worth over $2 billion. They had sold out arenas nationwide. Corporate sponsorships were surging like never before. The global sports economy was paying undivided attention. All they had to do was act like rational business partners, lock in historic pay raises that the owners were ready to provide, and step onto the court. Instead, they squandered it. The March 10th deadline passed without a deal, immediately plunging the league into an existential crisis. The May 8th tip-off is now in jeopardy. The draft is at risk. Free agency is frozen. Expansion teams are paralyzed, unable to build rosters or market themselves because the economic foundation of the league has collapsed. The union leadership thought they held the ultimate leverage. They believed they could hold the 2026 season hostage. They fatally miscalculated. The real leverage belongs to the owners. Billionaires backed by the NBA's multi-billion-dollar empire, who have absorbed WNBA losses for 25 years without blinking. If the season is canceled, the owners simply lock the gyms, stop paying salaries, write off losses on massive corporate tax returns, and turn their attention to the NBA playoffs. The players, however, have no safety net. Over 80% of the WNBA workforce is currently unemployed, waiting to sign contracts under a collective bargaining agreement that does not exist. Working-class players now face financial ruin because their leadership refused to confront reality. Why? Because the militant veterans are fighting an ideological war against their own golden goose.
27th submission, WNBPA Executive Committee Kelsey Plum said the league's offer marked a significant win amid negotiations. Okay, and she said it was a win, but you have people in the WNBPA slamming the offer, which is why we all knew that they weren't on the same page, and they just keep confirming it the more they speak publicly. Okay, they are not on the same page. They are not aligned. They are not all in agreement. Okay.
She acknowledged that the league's offer was a major victory. The financial increases on the table were historic, and she wanted nothing more than to accept the deal and get back to playing basketball. But the militant faction within the union rejected it outright. They refused to recognize the win. They refused to align themselves with reality. This raises a dark, uncomfortable question. Why would a group of professional athletes intentionally sabotage the best financial offer in the history of their sport? Why would they turn down a deal that promises unprecedented earnings, improved travel conditions, and long-term security?